All right, welcome to today's Zoom call. It is the 15th of June, 2022. Reminder again to make sure you look up your questions on our blog if you have questions, if you need them answered before the Zoom call comes along. And if you haven't joined the membership site, the patient membership site, please do so. Everybody should have received a invite to it. If some reason you can't find your invite, go to your main email that you've used to communicate with the clinic, because it's based upon your email, and search Info at Connors Clinic or membership to find it. Or you can email me at Info at Connors Clinic and I'll resend it. We've only had a few people that had difficulty getting on for some strange reason, but everybody's gotten on that's asked. That's where you ask your questions, and the easiest way to ask questions is through their place. We only had a few questions come in, so let's talk about them. This is the least amount of questions that we had sent in a couple of years, so everybody must be doing well. I hope and pray for that, and everybody must be finding their answers. So here's a great question. Are the greens and Essiac in the pill form just as good as the liquid form? Okay, so the Essiac is considered a tea. So Essiac was developed by I think it's the Ojibwe Indians in northern United States and Canada to use for treatment for serious disease. And then it was used on people that had a diagnosis with cancer with good results with many of them. You know, nothing is a cure for cancer. We have to understand that. You're doing everything you possibly can to help your body fight the disease like any other disease. But Essiac was that herb in a tincture type form that was then put in a liquid and it was sipped. And for some reason, and it doesn't mean that, you know, taking a dried herbal formula of the same herbs won't work just as well. From a physiological standpoint, I can't see how it would work any different. But in its original form, it was in a liquid form and it was supposed to be sipped slowly. If that's, you know, the only reason it, from a physiological standpoint, maybe was that you're absorbing it more slowly over time. Well, goodness sakes, couldn't I just take the pills split out during the day? To me, it makes just as much sense. I don't know. So for me, it's a lot easier to take pills sometimes than it is to make a shake. Now, if I'm at work, I make shakes almost daily at work. It's really easy to throw in the blender and make a greens shake. And that does kind of push me to add other things to it that are going to be beneficial for me. And so I do prefer the shake at different times. But I also use the Greens First capsules at home. And if I'm busy, I don't make shakes as often as at home than I do at work. And so it's easier for me to take the capsules. And it's certainly a whole lot easier to take capsules when you're traveling. So I get that. So for the greens, for sure, I don't think it makes any difference whether you're taking the capsules or you're making it a shake. You know, I don't think the absorption is any different anyway from a physiological standpoint. Essiac, it's just that traditional way of taking it was sipping it like a tea. But I don't know that there really be any physiological difference to it if you're taking the same herbs. Can I open the foot detox machine and clean it by sanding it? I'd say no, don't do that. Or could I spray the inside with a cleaner? No, don't do that. In your manual, there's a way to clean the ion foot bath. Also, there's a video on the membership site on how to clean the ion foot bath. We made a video on it too. It's on the everything Rife. It's on the Rife page. So look at that. So you use muriatic acid to clean your foot bath machine, and you should do that on a regular basis. Um, uh, I don't know of anybody that cleans it each time, but if you clean it once a month or something, you're going to help prolong the life of it. Listen, we've had people that have used it, never have ever cleaned the thing, and they get 120 uses out of it. The Ion Pro Wave does that. The little apparatus of the Ion Pro Wave technically only is supposed to last about 80 sessions. We've had people get a lot more than that, even not cleaning it. But I would think that if you do clean it, you are going to get more sessions out of it. So, but clean it the way they recommend. Oh, the cost of replacing it, I think it's like 120 bucks. So we have them on our website for the, I think it's around 120, 130, 140 bucks, something like that. Coming up to my 5th out of 6 chemo infusions. How do I decide if I stop chemo after the 6th time or just continue with alternative therapies? How do I decide that? This is probably one of the most common questions that I get in personal calls. And this is a question that I say, I feel like, I say it so often that I ended up making a video and several posts about it because I did. So look at that. I can't legally tell you these things. I can't tell you whether you should stop chemo or you should do chemo or not do chemo. That gets into medical conferencing, that gets into giving you medical advice, and I'm not a licensed medical doctor, and I'm not treating cancer. So the state board already does not like me at all, does not like that I'm trying to help people with a cancer diagnosis, does not like that I'm not an oncologist pushing chemo, does not like the color of my hair, probably. So I have to be really careful out of that. Besides the fact that even if I was licensed and could tell you these things, I think that's wrong to do so. Chemo, you can't argue with the fact that chemo has saved people's lives and can kill cancer. But you also can't argue with the fact that many people maybe have met their demise because of chemo. So how am I to say that chemo is good for a person or bad for a person? I can't say that. So as though many people ask me this question, I have to give the same answer. I can't legally, nor can I ethically answer that question. You have to make that decision. And that's where I refer back to having a relationship with God where you can be praying about and feeling peace about the decision you make so that you know that it's the right decision for you and you have peace about it regardless of what the outcome is. Because let's be honest, you could do chemo and the chemo could kill you, or you could not do chemo, and because you didn't do chemo, you ended up passing away because the cancer killed you. And how are you supposed to know that? Well, you're taking your oncologist's advice because the practice of medicine in the United States have basically deemed a medical doctor who's following standards of care, which was written by the pharmaceutical company, to be somewhat godlike. And as long as you do everything that this godlike oncologist tells you to do, then you're going to be okay. But then if you're not okay, well, then they don't take any responsibility. Well, we did everything we could and you passed away, but we tried our best. We did everything we could. But then if you chose not to do standards of care, well, then you're somehow, a communist or something and should be labeled as such. It's just really sad, the whole thing that we deal with in this country. And I'll step off my soapbox, but we get complaints from the state board against us. We're constantly being hounded for any little thing we say wrong that could constitute that we're practicing medicine. And all we're trying to do is give people advice to basically consult God about the decisions that they make in healthcare, in everything, not putting the practice of medicine of any kind, even alternative medicine, in the place of God. So I wish I could help answer this question, but I think the proper answer and the ethical answer to this question is what I've stated, is that you really need to seek advice from your Heavenly Father, what's going to be best for you, because only He knows. And that's why we say over and over again, and our website says over and over again, we're here to support you whatever decision you make. We're not here to judge you because you did chemo. We're not here to judge you because you didn't do chemo. We're here to just support you no matter what you do, and give you, as much nutritional support and health support to build up your immune system, and prayer support. And that's what our purpose is here for you. So, I know that people struggle with this question probably more than anything else. And I know some people probably get really mad at me because I just don't flat out give them an answer like an oncologist would. But he has no fear of saying you need to do chemo, because honestly, if he says anything other than that, he could get in trouble. I was just talking to another doctor that I know, a medical doctor, graduated from medical school, doesn't practice medicine anymore. But this person said that there's someone they know who is practicing medicine in the state of Minnesota. And in the emergency room, there was a very ill patient. I can't remember if they had liver cancer, but they had some sort of cancer. I think it was liver cancer. And this practicing physician said to this patient with liver cancer, well, maybe you need to stop eating cake and cookies. Maybe that would be the best thing for you. And there was another physician in the room, and that other physician wrote up this physician. And now this person has to go in front of the board and may lose their license for recommending that they stop eating cake and cookies to help improve their liver cancer. It is insane. And it is becoming more and more insane. And so, I had a question posed to me in the Zoom call a couple of weeks ago. Hey, how can we best pray for you? That would be the number one prayer that I would request from our patients, is that you pray for our protection from the powers that be. Hey, Satan does not want us doing what we're doing. Satan does not want us helping people, does not want us giving advice, does not want us praying for people, does not want us serving people to try to build their immune system and build their God-given human defense system against disease. And he is constantly attacking us by the state board and the attorney general's office. We're constantly being attacked and abused. And we're just not going to stop trying to help people. And even if I have to do it in jail. So, but I ask that you just keep us in your prayers that way. So it's not only for that reason that I can't answer this question, but I've never answered this question in the way that most people want me to. They want me to give them an answer what they should do. And I get it, and I understand it. But I hope you understand our position in that too. Question came in. I just went to the dentist this morning for my annual cleaning, and they discovered my 2 lymph nodes under my chin are both swollen, and asked if I had been sick. I have not, but am wondering why they would be swollen. They recommended I tell my doctor if that doesn't go away in 3 weeks, because they're aware of my cancer diagnosis. Wondering if you have any input. So yes, you can have swollen lymph nodes for multiple reasons. You can have a swollen lymph node. So remember what lymph nodes do. So lymph nodes are little nodules along the chain of a lymph vessel. So a lymph vessel is an open-ended vessel, open-ended capillary. Think of it as a storm sewer. Like you have a storm sewer on your street if you live in the city. So heavy rain comes, all the water runs down your sidewalk, down into the street, into the storm sewer. Well, where does that drain then? That drains down in the sewer system and goes somewhere. I don't know where a storm sewer goes, maybe to the river. But in your body, you have these open-ended capillaries, just like the storm sewer. So if you have any reason for inflammation anywhere, that inflammation will go into the open-ended capillary. This is how you get rid of dead cells. This is how you get rid of dead tissue. This is how you get rid of metabolic waste from cells, drain into the are dumped into the extracellular space, the space around the cell, and then will make their way through motion, through muscle contraction, into these open-ended vessels called lymph vessels, and then they will carry, there's no heart that pumps lymph, but through your muscle contraction, through motion, and through gravity, the lymph, what's in the lymph vessel, which is basically waste and swelling, will travel through the lymph vessel, ultimately back to a vein, which will then carry it basically through the blood supply, and your liver will pull it out and detoxify it. That's how you get chemicals out of your body, like toxins out of your body, go into the lymph system and out into the vein, and then through your liver detox pathways and dumped into your small intestine, go through your colon and dumped into the toilet. That's how you get rid of things in your body. But along the course of this lymph vessel, you have these little nodes, and these little nodes are concentrations of white blood cells that will then kill anything, because this is going to be dumped. This waste is going to be ultimately dumped into the venous system and go into the arterial system to be carried to the liver and to the kidneys to be ultimately deposited in the toilet. And if it's full of infection, bacteria, you're basically going to spread bacteria all over your body. So you have these lymph nodes that have a concentration of immune cells that will kill any bacteria or viruses or parasites in that waste that's being drained from the tissue. So let's say you have a dental abscess and an infection in a tooth, and all that infection is there. Well, that's going to drain into the lymph vessel, and we don't want to just cause an infection systemically, so it goes into the lymph node, and the lymph node kills that infection before it goes into the venous system and arterial system and make you all, very sick. So in the case of drainage of an infection, that's the most common reason why a person would have an inflamed and enlarged lymph node. So lymph node will enlarge, will inflame, hypertrophy, get larger because there's an infection being killed. Or a perceived infection. So even if it's you have a lot of swelling that's going through the lymph node or something like that, that perceived infection could increase the size of the lymph node, and those typically increased sizes are only for a period of time. They're not going to stay that large. Also, it can enlarge due to an allergy of some kind too. So anytime you had any type of cytokine reaction for something else, you could get an enlarged lymph node. So I would think number one would be an infection that would be, superior to where that lymph node is, that draining area of the lymph node, possible inflammatory reaction of some other kind, maybe a histamine reaction or something like that too, could possibly increase the lymph node. Those are the most common things. A person with a cancer diagnosis having an enlarged lymph node, you're also concerned about, is there metastasis to the lymph node? Again, that would be more common in line with how that area where the cancer is drains. So if the person had neck cancer, that's where you think about an enlarged lymph node under the jaw. If they had breast cancer, it could be supraclavicular lymph node or a lymph node in the chest. So you have to kind of discern that. So I'd watch that. If the lymph node is not painful at all, if it's enlarged and not painful and it's hard, that's typically textbook, more in line with the possibility of metastasis. If the lymph node is inflamed and it's painful to touch a little bit, or if I move it around, okay, it hurts, that's much more in line with it being enlarged from an infection. Long answer to that. Sorry about that. Okay, during an overnight program, is it normal for the TrueLife to start beeping and the LED to flash? Yes, yep, that's normal. When it's running different frequencies, it's going to make different sounds. Next question. Can one have tumor but no circulating tumor cells in the blood? Yes, for sure. So you will not always have circulating tumor cells, and that's why I'm not a big fan of testing for circulating tumor cells, because circulating tumor cells are circulating to the tissue. They're not just going to stay in the blood. So to test if you have circulating tumor cells, to me, doesn't really give you much information. That's why, I mean, people will argue, why did my oncologist test for circulating tumor cells? Well, my question would be, why do you want to test for circulating tumor cells? You just have to assume that you had circulating tumor cells. If you had a diagnosis of cancer, you had circulating tumor cells at some point in time and at different points in time. Why would you need to test for them? So I would agree with an oncologist that I don't see any need to test for those. You're not always going to have circulating tumor cells. Next question, is there a lab besides the Navarro Clinic that will perform the HCG urine cancer test? No, there is not that I know of, no. Sorry. Next question, my calcium is high, 10.2. I just finished a 10-session radiation treatment. My oncologist told me to eat less calcium, but everything seems to have calcium, even my almond milk and some vegetables and fruits. What should I do? I would agree with your oncologist in that you shouldn't be taking a lot of calcium, but I wouldn't be concerned about eating foods that are high in calcium, and unless you're eating a bunch of dairy products, which the calcium is not a good form of calcium. You should be eating your vegetables, which you don't have to worry about your calcium content of that. Typically, a high calcium in your blood would refer to calcium spillage. So it really has very little or nothing to do with consumption of calcium. Even if you overdosed on a really horrible source of supplemental calcium, like calcium carbonate, which is in a lot of the cheapo vitamins out there, it really wouldn't produce high blood levels of calcium because your body has a buffering system. So it will pull out the excess calcium. And unfortunately, poor sources of calcium, like calcium carbonate, can be deposited into your vessels and cause arteriosclerosis. That's why I'm so against, poor choices in supplementation and using cheap supplements and garbage stuff out there that's using elemental minerals. And I have a video on, choosing the right mineral product. But that's another point. Typically, high blood calcium suggests something that's going on. Let's say the person has no diagnosis of cancer and they have high blood calcium. What would be the first thing you think of? First thing you think of would be parathyroid disease. Your parathyroid glands are located, according to their name, next to the thyroid gland. And what they do is they secrete a hormone that helps you get rid of calcium in your kidneys. But when you have a parathyroid disease of some kind, usually it's parathyroid tumor, you end up retaining calcium, too much calcium from your kidneys, and you end up with high blood calcium. Well, the treatment for that is is fairly simple. You get that diagnosed and you remove the parathyroid glands, and you could live a very long life without that. But high calcium can cause issues like arteriosclerosis. So you don't want to have high calcium. If you have a diagnosis of cancer and you have high calcium, that brings up the other point. The second most common cause of high calcium is because of a cancer diagnosis and a lytic metastasis. So if you have metastasis to the bone, it's almost always what's called lytic. So if you have primary cancer to the bone, it's very often a blastic disease. What's the difference? So a blastic disease means you have laydown of calcium. So the bone gets larger, you end up with a nodule off the bone. That's called a blastic disease. So blastocytes and osteoblasts, particularly in bone, are cells that build bone. Osteoclasts break down bone. Lytic terminology means the breakdown of. So when cancer metastasizes from another cancer, let's say breast cancer, prostate cancer, that metastasizes to the bone, it's almost always a lytic disease, meaning it involves osteoclasts, the breakdown of bone. Well, where does that calcium go that's in the bone? It gets pushed to the blood. So you end up with high calcium levels in the blood. 10.2 is overwhelmingly high compared to some people that have a real issue, but this is really why you did the radiation therapy, I'm sure. So I wouldn't worry. To answer this question, you did the treatment with the oncologist to deal with the cause of the problem. I personally wouldn't worry so much about my dietary calcium unless you're taking supplements that have calcium in it. In case this is helpful to others, I had poorly managed chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy. I had improvement with acupuncture after one treatment. That's great news. Somebody asked that question, I think a few weeks ago, could they do acupuncture? I know it's been asked, 24 times on our Zoom calls about using acupuncture for neuropathy, and acupuncture can be very, very helpful. One caveat I would say to that is some people do acupuncture and try it and it doesn't help at all. My comment back is that you don't just, it's great that this person had success with one treatment, but don't give up if it doesn't happen that fast. So acupuncture is stimulating your body to heal itself. It's not treating disease of any kind. And sometimes it takes multiple sessions. So just don't give up on acupuncture. It can be very beneficial. Regarding the Navarro test, I appreciated that question because I went to their website last week and they're not accepting any samples. Yes, we've been talking about that's very sad. They're just overwhelmed. Are there natural ways to reduce the size of a breast tumor? Well, everything we're doing is trying to do that. So that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. I have read that high dose vitamin C is made from glucose, and camu camu is better, more naturally derived source of vitamin C. Are there high dose vitamin C options, IV options that are made from natural sources? Really good question, and we have searched for that, and we have not found that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not always that vitamin C doesn't test for a lot of IV vitamin C doesn't test for a lot of people, because what we're using for test source is what they're using. And I'm not saying that it's still not beneficial for people, but it is ascorbic acid. It isn't a whole food source because you can't get high dose of vitamin C in a whole food source. So understand what I'm talking about here. So vitamin C, like any other supplement, I talked about vitamin E last week. Vitamin C, the same thing. When it was first discovered, They only had, remember, most of these things were discovered in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Well, the level and quality of microscopy that they had at that time was really poor compared to what we have today. So when vitamin C was discovered, all they saw was the outer shell, which is ascorbic acid. So that is legally, vitamin C is ascorbic acid. So if you look up vitamin C, you'll see ascorbic acid. But in truth, no vitamin is just one thing. It's a molecule, a combination of molecules that work synergistically in nature. And vitamin C is the same thing. Whole food vitamin C has all these other synergistic cofactors that work with it. It's not just ascorbic acid. But from a legal standpoint, ascorbic acid is vitamin C. So most vitamin C out there is going to be just ascorbic acid. The problem with whole food vitamin C is it's a typically very low dose and be a low dose of measurable ascorbic acid. And there's no way that they could do that in a whole food source. So that's, I totally agree. That's a difficult thing with using IV nutrients, is that they're not whole food. Recently, I had a CT scan without contrast due to the contrast shortage found out the morning of the scan. Huh, wow, that's interesting. I asked the radiation oncologist for a comparison to previous scan. He ordered one via the radiologist. Results in brief was cancer was stable, yet one of my DO friends said to have a CT scan without contrast was useless without contrast to monitor progress. I was surprised to hear that, even though the radiologist didn't mention anything. Thoughts? So I wouldn't say that it's useless, but it's not. If you had a CT scan with contrast, and now you're having a CT scan without contrast, you're not really measuring apples to apples. Now you'd have to speak to a radiologist to get a more full understanding of that, because that's not me. But it still is two different scans, and it really partly depends upon that person's type of cancer. And I don't have the answer to that for the types of cancer. But some cancers, it's fine to not use contrast to be able to visualize it. Some you need contrast to visualize it. And that would be a question for the oncologist, but that's a good question. I have heard you on the circulated, I just heard you on circulated tumor testing. I have been hoping to check circulated tumor cells midway through the chemo protocol based on info from your book that says Taxol specifically shrinks tumors, but also can elevate circulated tumor cells. I don't remember that part of my book, but must have been citing a study. I was hoping to check circulated tumor cells' current state to gauge how they're trending now. I would be careful with that. And for the same answer that I had above, is that, you know, I would be, and I don't know that there's any data on this, but I would question, let's say if you had a blood test at 8 o'clock this morning, you had another one at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and you did that for about 3 or 4 days straight, I would be willing to bet that your circulated tumor cell numbers would not be consistent. I think they would be up and down if they showed. I don't think that circulated tumor cells are released by a existing cancer at any regular rate whatsoever. I don't know that there's any data that shows how regular that they're released. So if I quoted a study in the book about Taxol, it was somebody else's work that I was quoting. As I had normal circulated tumor count before beginning chemo. So you would be a great study on this. This would be, I would love to see the results of this if you are going to choose to do that. I'm thinking this might help decide if I continue chemo. I think that's a good thing. I think you're thinking really clearly there. So is there an existing test that will check circulated tumor cells? There are circulated tumor cell tests out there that are medical tests that you can have done. That's anything that we can run, but you may want to check with I don't know if your oncologist will run these. I know this person's oncologist is very friendly to try natural things. They may be able to run those. Should I try Essiac even if I didn't see it listed on my treatment plan? Well, like always, our way is not the highway, the only way. So we are not my way is the highway. Is that what I'm saying? I'm getting my things all mixed up here. Sorry, but we are not the only way. If you believe God is leading you to try something, but by all means, listen to him. So if you want to try Essiac, then you go right ahead and try Essiac. So that's your prerogative. I'm not anything against that. My doctor thinks I've gotten out all the tumor with the black salve and are now working with microscopic disease. I'm about to apply application number 16. The lymph node is now feeling smaller and flatter. Any idea how many more applications? Pain is decreasing and eschars are coming out faster. No, but my thought is you just keep applying until nothing else comes out. It's just, as far as you got all the tumor, but all you're dealing with microscopic disease, I'm sorry, but cancer is a microscopic disease. It is one cell that has gone awry and in rapid replication. So if you're pulling that out, you just keep going until it's done. So don't stop until you get it all out. So congratulations, you are a great testimony to hard work and perseverance. And God is just really honoring that in your life. And I'm so proud of you. I just got some supplements from Connor's Clinic and have had a reaction to taking supplements. I feel nausea and a little shaky. Do you have to work into taking them sometimes? Yes, sometimes people are more sensitive to things than other people. Some people can just take handfuls of supplements and have no problem. Some people have a little upset stomach. Maybe it has to do with the little not enough HCl in your stomach. Maybe it has to do with sensitivity to some of the capsules themselves. Everybody's a little bit different. So it's always good to start slow and work up. So let's say if something's recommended to take 3 times a day, you might want to take only 1 a day and work up to 3 times a day and do that in each one of your supplements. That might be a lot better. You might want to try taking them with food. That might work better too. So try those things. I think that's great. Gosh, thank you. You keep me posted. That would be really great. So lab rat. My oncologist uses Signatera circulating tumor. So that's interesting. That's a good note. So write that down. I enjoyed your interviews with Nathan Crane on the recent Missing Link documentary. Thank you. Are those available on our website? It's hard. I can ask Dustin because were these just recently published? I don't know because these were interviews that I did probably months ago when I do a lot of them. So I don't even know what he used them on. So I will ask Dustin. We're trying to get any interviews that I do up on our member site. But Dustin said there's some legal things that we have to ask permission to do. So we might have to do that. So I'll check into that and see if we can get that. Any other questions? What do you recommend for nausea? So when I had really bad nausea, I used a product from Young Living. It was an essential oil that had ginger in it. It was called, jeepers, I have it sitting in my car in case I get nausea anymore. When I haven't had nausea for a while, or if I did, it's just passed real quick, so I didn't take anything. I have to think of it. There's also a homeopathic spray that we sell that's, remember who makes it, but it's called Not Now Nausea. But make sure if you have nausea that you, if depends on where, when you're getting nausea, if like shaking it, if you're getting nausea, if you take supplements, make sure you eat a little bit. Sometimes it's best just to keep a little bit of food in your stomach. That can be beneficial. Um, but to me, when I had really bad nausea, using an essential oil of ginger helped. Using ginger chews can help. I know I have several videos on nausea, and I know I have several blog posts on nausea. So look those up on our website. Just search nausea. Here you should find something. Sorry, I can't remember the name of that one product that I have several models of at home. What happens if you retire? Well, you don't have to worry about me retiring. You have to worry about me, because I don't ever plan on retiring. But if something happens to me and I get hit by a bus, well, then, hopefully my staff is going to continue on this clinic and continue this, our mission, because we all believe the same thing, and that is that this is a calling that we have. And that's where I ask your prayers, everybody's prayers, that we can continue this the way we're operating before the medical establishment tries to shut us down. That's what we need to be praying for. So these group sessions like this are the most protective for us. And that is because these are just educational, and this falls under the freedom of speech, which still exists in this country for I don't know how long, but that's okay. If you had to choose between an iron foot bath and far infrared sauna for detoxing, for me, I would say the sauna. I have been doing sauna every day because it feels so good, but then have been not foot bathing as much. And I'm honest with everybody, and I tell everybody this if they ask the question. Personally, I don't ever do ion pro waves, and it's not because I don't believe in them or I don't like them. It's just I just don't take the time to do that. That's just my personality. I can't sit in one place at any given time. Well, sauna is sitting, but I do feel so much better when I do the sauna. So I don't do the sauna in the summer, but in the winter I do the sauna. And it's, I think that, if you are a sweater, you are sweating in the sauna, you are literally taking so much pressure off your kidneys and your liver. Remember, anything that goes through your liver is trying to detox. It has to go through the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 pathways. Then it has to get dumped into the small intestine. Then it has to get all the way to the toilet before you reabsorb it. And if you're sweating it out, you're using your skin as a detoxification portal. And that is just taking so much pressure off your liver and your kidneys. Thank you. Digize is the essential oil. Yes, it is. Thank you for that. That is the essential oil that I use. I typically just would put a drop on my finger and put it in my mouth, maybe 2 or 3 drops if my nausea was really bad, and that seemed to help. Doesn't help everybody, but it helped me. Good question here. Is working up a sweat outside on a hot sunny day just as good as a sauna? Yes. If you're looking at a sauna as not the other possible benefits of far infrared, but simply as sweating and detoxifying through your skin and using your skin as a portal of detoxification and bypassing the liver and the kidneys like I just explained, then absolutely. That's why I don't do the sauna in the summer, because I garden and work outside all the time. So that's just what I like to do. So I sweat like a poked hog outside. So I feel like I'm saunaing just about every day when I'm outside doing that. So absolutely, you're helping with detoxification through sweating. Remind me of remedies for tinnitus, please. Is it a brain problem? Is sauna good for tinnitus? I don't know if I have a lot on my blog about tinnitus. You could pronounce it tinnitus or tinnitus, either way. Um, it because tinnitus is typically a temporal lobe issue. So one of the lobes in your brain is your temporal lobe that is right behind your ears there. And that is a nerve ending that is firing, causing that sound. Um, that's why there's no easy fix for tinnitus usually. Um, it is really trying to work on firing the temporal lobe. Now, there are some brain-based therapies that can help with that. We used to do a lot of brain-based therapy. I'm trained as a functional neurologist too. We just haven't done that for a long time. We do have some brain cancer patients that I still do some brain-based therapy on, but nothing like we used to. But temporal lobe stimulation may be able to help tinnitus. And I can try to make a blog about that. There are some specific temporal lobe stimulation techniques that may be able to help. Personally, I never, saw a lot of patients with tinnitus, so I don't have a lot of experience as far as how well it did, any of that would work. Would sauna be helpful for tinnitus? I would certainly think so, because if there is detoxification that needs to take place, that's going to help. I would think that that would be beneficial. Just read your Lyme email about misdiagnosis towards psychiatric issues. Would the right protocols for depression or protocols for Lyme disease work better for teenagers? Meaning, would they work better for teenagers than for adults, or would they work better for teenagers for Lyme disease than something else? I don't know, but let me just, Lyme disease can cause, is one thing that can cause inflammation in the brain that can damage microglial cells. If you want more information about microglial damage and brain inflammation, I'd highly suggest you watch my video. Let me just pull it up real quick and share it, because this can be very beneficial for people that are struggling with that. Just down so I can get to it, and I'll share the blog post. But the brain inflammation in the brain can cause damage to microglial cells, and the microglial cells are a certain type of brain cell that are called that are in the class of glial cells, and these glial cells, these microglial cells, can get what's called become primed. Primed microglial cells damage the ability of the glial cell to be able to perform its function. And the microglial cell's function is to, here's the link right here, if I can get it up there. So if you search for this on this little thing, neuroinflammation or microglial priming, I have a video about microglial priming on that, go into nauseating detail on that for 20 minutes and explain what a person should do if they have microglial priming for any reason, whether it's due to a long-standing Lyme disease, and all the research on this has actually come from post-concussive syndrome research. So they found that post-serious concussion or post-multiple less serious concussions, even decades later, could cause microglial priming because the neuroinflammation continues to just ramp. And when the microglial cells become primed, then they become less active. They become less able to do their job. And microglial cells literally are the immune system of the brain. They're like macrophages in the regular tissue. That's what microglial cells do. And that can end up with a lot of depression, anxiety, other psychiatric conditions that are diagnosed as different conditions, and it all stems back to microglial priming. They're finding this is a major cause of early dementia and even possible Alzheimer's. So it's just another theory in Alzheimer's and what can cause the plaquing and the tau formation of Alzheimer's disease. So watch that video, that will help with that. The Rife machine can be helpful. Rife protocols for depression can be helpful for those with depression and anxiety. No matter what your issues are, those depression protocols can be very beneficial. And definitely the Lyme disease protocols can be very beneficial for Lyme disease, but one caveat to that is that they do kill very quickly. So you want to go slow with them because the person could have a Herxheimer reaction. And I do have another blog about Herxheimer reactions that explain what that is. So look at that as well. Thank you for your prayers. So whether you have depression or anxiety or any type of psychiatric diagnosis, use the Rife for those things. You try them, it can be very helpful. I lost 10 pounds because I was having constipation issues. Is there any good way to put on weight? Well, I don't really have a problem with that, but the biggest way to put on weight is to eat carbohydrates. So the problem is you don't want to eat a whole bunch of simple carbohydrates because that can feed the cancer. So you need more complex carbohydrates really is your solution. So that is like eating potatoes and sweet potatoes and rice, good whole grain rice and oats and oatmeal. That's the way to do that, is to try to eat some more complex carbohydrates. Can Rife keep the tissue around the tumor alkaline? Well, I believe so, but I don't know. The problem with any alkaline or acidity, it's really impossible to measure because you literally need to cut the person open and stick a pH strip in them. And even at that, if you cut the person open and stick a pH strip and you changed the milieu because you added oxygen, and is it a pure test? Well, I haven't had anybody offer for me to cut them open and stick a pH strip in them, so I don't know. So, but under theory, yes, the answer is theoretically yes, and I do think that that does take place. Okay, I think we'll quit for today. Thank you for submitting your questions on the member site, and thank you for participating. Hopefully this is educational for everybody, and know that I'll be praying for all of you as well. All right, bye-bye, everybody.